All right, the demand curve explains it all. We are actually going to be constructing a demand curve in this class today. We're going to be constructing a chocolate chip cookie demand curve. Okay. This morning, once again, I got up and did some baking, right? I have 10 fresh baked chocolate chip cookies with real vanilla and real butter and all of those things. All right. So, now, you can only be part of this demand curve if you like chocolate chip cookies and would consider buying them. You're not allergic to them. Anybody never ever consider buying chocolate chip cookies in the class? So, all of you can be part of this, and what we're going to have you do is grab your clicker and we're going to construct a demand curve.
This is my first year using clickers, and I kind of like them. Here they are. And they're fairly easy to use. I mean, it's not very complicated whatsoever. Like you can see on the graph, instantaneously after the question is closed, you see the results. They definitely make students pay attention in class more. So I think they're great.
Now you don't have to have this money on you. Just typically, if you were walking by somebody selling cookies, we're going to ask you if you'd be willing to pay certain amounts for these cookies. You can only buy all of them all together, right? And so my first question to you, would you be willing to spend, how many of you, and everybody can be part of this demand curve, how many of you would be willing to spend 50 cents for these cookies? Go ahead and give me your response. Oops. All right. 50 cents. How many of you would be willing to spend 50 cents for those cookies? All right. So 51 of you. 5 of you said no. No way, that's too much. 50 cents for all those cookies, that's way too much. So 51 said yes. Okay, would you be willing to pay $1 for those cookies?
Are they nice and soft?
That's like 10 cents a cookie. What?
Are they nice and soft?
They are nice and soft. I try not to bake them too long so they're a little bit gooey in the middle. How many of you would be willing to spend $1 for those cookies? And 52 of you said yes. 1 of you dropped out. Who was that? Who dropped out? Like $1 is just too much. 10 cents a cookie is too much. All right. Who would be willing to spend $1.50 for those cookies? $1.50. And the answer is 51 of you. 8 of you dropped out. All right. How many of you would be willing to spend $2 for those cookies? All right, so the answer is 49. Only 49 of you would be willing to spend $2 for those cookies. So this is kind of following the law of demand. The higher the price gets, the less the quantity demanded is. How many of you would be willing to spend $3 for those cookies? There's a opportunity cost, a trade-off here that you're faced with. Marginal benefit versus marginal cost, right? Is that benefit worth the additional cost to me? And only 39 of you would be willing to spend $3 for those cookies. All right. How many of you would be willing to spend $4? Yeah, just try to keep answering even if you said no, but you have to keep saying no if you said no. You can't come back into the demand curve if you already dropped out. That would make sense. That would be illogical.
You're totally planning on ruining your career.
Yeah. And only 22 of you. So we're reaching a point where the marginal cost is just getting too high. The benefit to you is, or the cost is outweighing the benefit at this point. All right, let's up it up at $1 more. Would you be willing to spend $5? A lot of that depends on your circumstances right now, like we talked about it being situational. Some of you might be ravenous. You might be willing to trade your birthright for those cookies. All right. And we only only have 14 people willing to spend $5 for the cookies. I'm going to up it one more dollar. How many of you would be willing to spend $6 for those cookies? Or is that just getting too expensive? The marginal cost is outweighing the marginal benefit to you. And the answer is only 10 of you would be willing to spend $6. So do we have the number 10? You're going to help me, he's going to help me construct the demand curve here. Let me get rid of the picture. We do have, it does follow the law of demand. It is a downward sloping demand curve, right? It's a little weird. It's kind of like that. But it does show you the law of demand, right? So the higher the price, the less quantity is going to be demanded. The lower the price gets, following the law of demand, the more quantity demanded. Now the 10 of you that would be willing to spend $6, you must be hungry or you hadn't had breakfast. You guys can come up and grab one of those cookies. Kind of the honor system though. Which 10 of you that said you'd be willing to spend $6? Obviously, you have the biggest desire for those. All right, moving on. A change in demand, however, is not the same thing as a change in quantity demanded. They sound kind of similar, but they're a little bit different. A change in demand results from some other factor that makes households buy more or less at each price, and the entire demand curve actually shifts. What are some of the shifters of demand? You might have woke up thinking about that this morning. What about change in customer taste? Anybody ever? And if you'd be willing to admit to this, maybe I should have had a clicker question for this one so you could have been anonymous. How many of you were ever a Backstreet Boys fan? All right. So I would say that actually the whole demand curve is actually shifted for Backstreet Boys music. Has it shifted out? Has it increased or has it decreased? Decreased. So I've got a little slip I want to show a little bit. Anyway, I was going to draw the new demand curve, but the marker's not working. But the whole demand curve is actually probably shifted way, way down into the corner.